Hi, we're going to be working on the anger cycle today, automatic anger cycle, and it's pretty easy. We're going to start out, just make a circle here, and the start of the anger cycle is going to be called cruising along. Now, cruising along is anything that you're doing before you start getting angry, or start feeling upset, or start having an invitation to be upset. You could be walking, hiking, sitting, watching TV, in class, many things, any number of things. You're not upset at all during this cruising along phase. The next part is going to come right after cruising along is invitations. Now, an invitation is kind of like an invitation to a party or an event. And the reason we call this an invitation is because you get to choose whether or not to accept it, just like you would an invitation to an event. So some people call these triggers, and the reason we don't call these a trigger, because trigger kind of sounds like something that's making you do something. And because this is options to anger, we don't want you to think like that you have to do anything. We want to make sure that you know that you have the options to do something else. The next part is called warning signs. Warning signs have two different types. The first one is feelings, and that is any emotional early warning signs that you might have. And the next one is called physical early warning signs. Physical is things that are going on with your body. For example, your heart rate increasing, your palms sweating, eyes watering, pacing. Try to think of any types of things that you do and your body does when you are starting to notice that you're heading towards anger. Feelings, the emotional side, those are all the different ways you might feel when you're about to get upset. It's hard to recognize. So feelings are the emotional part of what's going on. Feelings are any emotions you have before you get angry. For me, often it's embarrassment. If I'm embarrassed about something, that's a good indicator that I might be heading towards our next part of the cycle, which is anger. It wouldn't be the anger cycle without anger, I suppose. And anger is when you start to lose control. You may do things that you might regret doing later. And some of those things might come with consequences, which is our next part. Now, consequences can be good things or bad things. Try to think of a good consequence that might come from anger. One example that people sometimes bring up is that they feel better. They feel like they got their anger out. They moved along, they got their anger out of them. Maybe their anger involved hurting someone or saying something that hurt someone's feelings. And that might help the person who's angry feel better. Anger also has negative consequences that we might not like. such as people being upset with us, maybe a new law violation, maybe time in detention, maybe having to do a class, maybe problems in your family. But an important thing to remember about this cycle is that it comes back around. No one's ever been angry forever. Eventually, we calm down, and we call that going back to normal. And when you're back to normal, you've worked through your consequences, you aren't angry anymore, you aren't feeling these early warning signs. And now, it's important to remember this because when you're starting to feel these early warning signs, if you can recognize that you will be back to normal, you can help you calm down, and you can avoid doing something here that you don't want to do. So that is the basics of the automatic anger cycle. Let's try to apply a story to the anger cycle we just built. James is walking home from school. A classmate drives by and calls him a loser. James feels embarrassed and his heart starts pumping fast. He starts to clench his fists. He throws his backpack at the car as they drive by and yells, "F you," at them. His backpack opens up as he throws it, and all his stuff falls out on the road. He is very embarrassed and feels sad. James picks up his stuff and keeps walking home. So let's look at our anger cycle. Where do you think James was just cruising along? So James was cruising along when he was walking home from school, because he has not received an invitation yet. What invitation do you think he felt or received? The classmate yelling at him, calling him a loser, is a big invitation. He might have been called a loser before. Maybe he doesn't get along with this person. There could be other feelings that have built up over time. But this is definitely the invitation in this story. So we have some warning signs here in this story, and obviously we're going to look at where he feels embarrassed and his heart starts pumping fast. He also starts to clench his fists here. So the physical parts are the heart beating fast and the clenching of fists. And the feeling part here, or the emotional part, is the feeling embarrassed. So these things happen before he gets angry. The anger part, that's the throwing the backpack. So someone who's not angry wouldn't throw their backpack necessarily at a car in anger, because they're not angry. It's not going to work out super well for him, as we see in this story. The consequence of him throwing the backpack. Now, there might be more than the consequences that are in the story that happen, but from the story we can tell that one of the consequences is that his backpack opens up and all the stuff ends up on the road and he has to go pick it up now. Another consequence is that he's feeling even more embarrassed and now he's feeling sad. You can probably think of some other consequences too. One positive consequence is maybe that it felt good to throw something when he was angry, and it might have felt like he relieved some of that pressure that he felt building up when he was starting to feel angry. Now, with all situations, we eventually go back to normal. He might still be upset with that person in the future, but he'll eventually calm down. So, and that's when he starts walking home again. So, he might be upset as he's picking up his stuff and walking home, but eventually he'll be back to normal. Because if you stay angry all the time, that can be pretty stressful. So everyone eventually goes back to normal.